We're back again today on another really important discussion, and in a discussion that is hopefully going to help you to overcome your emetophobia, as quickly and as easily as possible. Today, Rob, I want to ask you a fair amount of questions, if you can prepare yourself for that, on collusive others, significant others, and the effect that that is going to have on someone trying to overcome their phobia.
Okay.
So, Rob, essentially, what does colluding within a relationship really mean?
Good question. Okay. So, from a psychological standpoint, when someone is colluding with you, they are either consciously or unconsciously, or better still, intentionally or unintentionally, agreeing with a set of beliefs or thinking that you have and not challenging it. And that might be helping you maintain a direction that you're going in life. It might be keeping a secret with you. It might be kind of ignoring the elephant in the room. You and I both know that our dad must have been stealing all that stuff because he hasn't got much money, right? And yet he comes home every day with all this booze. Where's he getting that from? And we are either consciously or unconsciously agreeing not to ask that question or to look at that thing.
Okay, yeah, and I'm with you. Now, you tend to see, especially when we're looking more specifically a emetophobic relationship that one could have with a significant other. How might that significant other be it a parent, a partner, a best friend, or whoever it is, someone that is really important within their circle? Why might they, because obviously a parent loves their child and they want the majority of the time to see them getting over their phobia and moving on with their life. Why might they collude with their child and inadvertently stop them from getting over their phobia?
And typically that's a very big question, right? So first of all, a significant other in therapeutic terms is the person that you are emotionally closest to, the person you rely on the most, the person whose shoulder you cry on the most, the person that you phone when everything goes Pete Tong. Okay, so for an emetophobe, if they're under the age of 25, that's usually their mum or parent or guardian or teacher. If they're over that age, it's normally their best friend or their partner, husband, whatever. Okay, so it's almost always just one person, that one person that you ultimately rely on or go to or text or phone whenever you're feeling anxious, stressed, or worried. Okay? The difficulty is that the significant other, by default, really, with emetophobia, is also unknowingly and unwittingly a collusive partner on the whole. Okay? And which means that if you really care for somebody and you love somebody, be it that they are their child or your best friend or your partner, your lover, whatever, you don't want to see them hurt. You don't want to see them upset. You don't want to see them scared. It pains you. You don't want to see them feeling vulnerable, frightened, crying. You care for that person. And so if you see that person upset, anxious, whatever, a lot, as a kind, caring person, you're going to try and help them. Obviously, why wouldn't you? Okay, if you're my best friend and we're on a Zoom call now, and you're saying, Rob, I'm really scared today. There's been a lot of burglaries in the area, and I can't sleep, and I'm just really frightened. As your mate, I wanna help you calm down, and I want to help you feel better and feel safer. But by doing so, I might inadvertently help you maintain an unhelpful belief. Okay? So, I'm responding to you emotionally rather than responding to you kind of factually or thoughtfully. Because you're my bestie, I just want to make you feel better, Joe. I just want to give you a cuddle, mate, and make it all go away. Okay? But actually, what's maintaining your fear and your lack of sleep at the moment is a misunderstanding about the number of burglaries in your area, and a misunderstanding about how vulnerable you are about the possibility of being burgled, right? And if I don't gently challenge you on that or pull you up on that, instead I just give you a big hug and say, mate, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. You can always come and stay at my place. Why don't we get some new locks for your doors? I'm actually disabling you, that's the correct phrase, in that you are maintaining your anxious state. When in fact, what I perhaps could have done or should have done was placate you, recognize how you're feeling, support you, but at the same time also say, Joe, you'll be fine, don't worry about it, because actually there's 2.2 million people in your area and there's only been 17 burglaries, and actually no one's been really hurt, so the chances of you being burgled are so low, you don't really need to stay that worried. Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
supporting you and caring for you and helping you calm down and get better regulation of your emotions, but I'm also gently challenging you about why you're feeling that way in the first place. If I don't challenge you and I'm your significant other, you're going to maintain your belief.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm
And
sacrificing, I'm unintentionally sacrificing the potential long-term benefit of me challenging you because I care so much for you that right now all I want to do is just help Joe calm down. And you're paying a price for that
yeah.
in that you're maintaining your unhelpful beliefs about the chance of being burgled, which is unintentionally helping you stay anxious. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. So if we're looking at that, right, I mean, I can think of a million and one different examples of how someone might collude with me or collude with one of my clients when it comes to emetophobia. But if I put myself in the emetophobe's shoes, right, and I'll sort of lead you into a bit of an example, can you give a example of how you wouldn't or shouldn't collude me or how you should lightly challenge me? So, if me and you, and I had severe emetophobia, take it back to, 4 or 5 years ago, and we go out for dinner and we're sitting there at the table and I start to let on to you that I'm feeling really nauseous and I'm feeling really anxious and I really don't like being here and I want to go home. Please, Rob, can we go home? Right? Can you, explain so that people can get a really good idea based off of that, because I'm sure that it's something that a lot of people can relate to. On one side, how you could collude with me and go along with what I'm asking of you, and then on the other side, what you should be doing in order to start to challenge my belief there and not buy into me.
Okay. You do these such hard questions. There are much easier ones you could have asked than that. So, okay, so we need to go back a tiny step. And just in case this is the only podcast someone has seen, okay? So, emetophobia, any phobia, is actually caused by a series of beliefs that the sufferer has, which are supported by thinking styles, attitudes, behaviors, this kind of stuff, right? So it's driven by beliefs. A phobia is a belief about a situation, okay? So it's the belief that is driving.
Yep.
So when you say, how would you challenge that person's belief? That's the reason why we would do that, okay? So we're in a restaurant and I'm with somebody that has emetophobia and they're getting panicky and they want to leave. What should I do? What would... Okay, let's look at different variations on that. What would be the most unhelpful thing to do long term?
Yeah,
Right? If
perfect.
our goal is to support our loved one over their emetophobia, if I say, no problem, Joe, can I have the bill, please, and we go, obviously, in the short term, I'm helping you to feel much better, much calmer, and we go home, and you've escaped this terrifying situation, and you feel much better, and you're very grateful to me, and I love you, so we're great, and everything's happy, right? But
Yep.
by allowing you to, avoid that situation, I've inadvertently agreed with you that the situation genuinely was terrifying and genuinely was going to be catastrophic for you, which in all reality, that was never going to be. So I've colluded with you within that belief. I'm helping you to maintain that belief. So going home immediately and kind of us giving in to the perceived threat is the worst course of action. Now, obviously, this is a massive grey area, which is why this is a hard question to answer. Right? I'll give some better examples in a minute. Okay, because if you were absolutely panicked and terrified, then that's the only thing we should do is actually take you home, because you're not getting any benefit from staying. Okay. However, if you were just anxious or just really anxious and not yet at the point where you're terrified and we just have to go, a more helpful thing to do would be for me to remind you that this thing isn't happening to you. It's not outside happening to you. Therefore, there is something you can do about it. So if you start to calm your thinking down, you take a couple of deep breaths, remind yourself it's not happening to you, remind yourself that you can calm down your reaction, remind yourself that actually, although you believe that you couldn't cope if you were ill, you would cope. And excuse me, my camera's moving. You would cope, and that actually it'd be all right. And I might remind you that, in fact, last time you were ill, you only said it was a 2 out of 10. It wasn't that bad at all. Sorry, my camera's moving on the shop. So those sorts of things, reminding you actually that you are powerful and you're not totally powerless. You're not totally vulnerable. I'm helping you challenge your belief that the only thing you can do right now is run out of this restaurant or you're going to die. Okay? And that might sustain you for a little bit longer, and you might get to the point where you can calm yourself down and you can remind yourself, actually, do you know what, Rob, you're right. The last time I was ill, it really wasn't that bad. And actually, I was back to work an hour later. What am I doing? And you're using that knowledge then to calm yourself down and to manage your emotional response to the event, to the situation. Okay, you're calming yourself down with a reality check, if you like, or a fact check of the genuine threatening nature of the situation. You're calming yourself down. Okay, and the more I can help you do that, the more powerful you feel, the less anxious you're going to be in the future. Don't forget that people only ever feel anxious or scared or frightened or vulnerable in situations where they don't feel powerful. And powerful means either being able to avoid or cope with the situation. So the more you learn to cope, the more powerful you feel over your phobia, the more your phobia is going to disappear. So every time I allow you or support you in running away, or support you in washing your hands 100 times before you go to work, although I'm helping you to calm down, I'm also helping you to maintain your phobia, when actually what I want to be doing is slightly challenging that with you. Gently, yeah? Because it's a very gentle challenging. It's not a question of, don't be ridiculous, Joe, we're staying for the evening. That's not going to be helpful. Oh, you did this last time. I want to stay and eat. Just get a grip, will you, Joe? For goodness sake. That's obviously completely unhelpful. If I give you a slightly better example in relation to something like depression, if you've come home if you're my partner and you've come home from work and you're really, really depressed, you're really, really pissed off, and I say, "Oh, you look really glum, Joe. What's the matter?" Oh, you say, "Rob, my work is so depressing. It's just so depressing. I just feel awful." And I say, "Come on, mate, let's go and sit in the garden and have a glass of wine. Let's go and have a cuddle. Let's go and take the dog for a walk or something." Okay? I'm supporting you and giving you love and attention and helping you calm down and reassure you. but I'm not challenging your belief that it was work that made you depressed. So that belief may continue tomorrow or the next week or the next month. So I'm being kind and caring, but in such a way that's helping you maintain your belief. Okay? So a much better response would have been, oh mate, that's horrible. Come sit down, let's have a cup of tea. Remember though that I can help you, we can help you change the way you respond to what happens at work so you don't get so depressed. Yeah, it's not work that's making you depressed, Joe. It's the way you're reacting to it. Why don't we help you build up some of those mental defenses to that so you don't get so depressed? So I'm being supportive and kind, caring, loving, etc., but also gently challenging the belief that you have that is working in can't see on the camera, working in an office causes me depression, which is actually not true. Okay?
Yeah.
It's the way that you're reacting
Okay.
to that situation that's causing it. So I want to be supportive and kind and caring and calming whilst also slightly challenging you a little bit. If I give you another example in relation to emetophobia, then one of the things that partners often do is help someone maintain their belief that being sick is terrifying. So if your partner or your child, your student says, "Oh my God, it's the worst thing in the world, I'm terrified," you want to be supportive and kind and caring. So, well, come and sit over here. Let's get out the room. That's fine. You're safe right here. You then want to gently challenge that belief, and you might say something like, "Did you see that nobody else in the classroom was anxious? Do you realise that most people find sickness or vomiting to be mildly uncomfortable? Most people in the world don't feel the same way you do about it. Why do you think that is? Maybe there's a particularly strong reaction in you for some reason. Maybe we could help you calm down that reaction a little bit so you don't suffer as much as you are." So it's those gentle little challenges, gentle little reminders. The most obvious being in relation to a person's locus of control. Remember that to have a phobia in the first place, you must first believe that you are powerless and you won't be able to cope. And secondly, you must believe that it's happening to you. Okay? So I might say to you, spiders make me terrified, Joe. Okay? And you go, oh, crikey, they're Rob, they're horrible, aren't they? Okay? So you've supported me by agreeing with me, but actually you've also helped me maintain my belief that spiders are terrifying. And of course, most people would say that spiders aren't terrifying. They can be annoying, they can be, some parts of the world, they're dangerous, right? But still, I got Australian, Aussie friends that aren't the least bit upset or perplexed or anxious about spiders. And they're the only people in the world really that should be scared of spiders. Okay? So challenging that belief, I can see that you're anxious around spiders, Rob, but it's not really the spider that's doing it to you. It's the way you're responding to the spider. Remember that you can change the way you're responding. You don't have to respond in the way that you are. Let's look at ways in which you can calm that response down or change the way you're thinking about spiders. Feelings aren't facts. Just because you're terrified doesn't mean it's terrifying. Because look, nobody else in the room is panicking. It's like on an aeroplane if someone's got a phobia of flying and there's a little bit of turbulence or bumpiness and someone's panicking. If they just looked around them and realised that nobody else was bothered by it and that the, sorry about my camera, and that the crew and the, excuse me, Joe, and that the crew and the stewards and stewardesses were still going around serving drinks, you might think, hang on a sec, maybe we're not all going to die because nobody else seems to be as anxious as me. In fact, they're still serving drinks. It can't be that bad. So looking at a little bit of evidence that might challenge your belief makes you feel more powerful and stops you from maintaining that ongoing belief about sickness. For example, I'll give you an
Yeah.
example
Yeah.
in relation to, say, hand washing. So I sensibly lock the doors at night at home, okay? But when I lock the doors at night at home, I don't lock them hiding behind the curtain. I don't lock the doors at night because I'm terrified of being burgled, okay? I'm performing that task because it's a simple, easy to do, sensible precaution for the 1 in a million chance that I might get burgled. Okay, but I don't do it with fear. I don't do it out of fear or anxiety. Yeah, I just do it once because it's a sensible thing to do. So, an emetophobe washing their hands before they eat dinner is sensible. You can do that, but you don't need to feel anxious as well. You certainly don't need to do it. You certainly don't need to do it 5 times. Yeah. So, challenging the way you think about that situation and slightly reducing the belief you have about it each time you're supporting your loved one is the way forward. Because if you don't, you are helping them to maintain that belief. And it's the belief or the set of beliefs that is actually causing the phobia in the first place. That's why it's so important. That's why it's so important.
Yeah.
And you'll see this. You'll see this. Don't know why this is doing this today. Apologies. You'll see this, Joe, in as a silly example, parents with children when they collude with their child's belief about Santa. Okay, you only need one person.
Yep.
Don't know too much now, Alec. You only need one person to help you maintain that belief. Okay, you can have everyone else around you is telling you, don't worry about being sick. What the hell are you talking about, Joe? It's nothing worth worrying about, okay? Okay, but you found one person, your significant other, that agrees with you, albeit unintentionally. That's enough for you to maintain it. That's enough for you to maintain
Yeah,
it.
because the evidence that I'm looking for.
A parent colluding with their child for what ostensibly is a positive reason, believing in Santa, because it's perceived to be helpful and kind and lovely for a parent to teach their child to believe in magic and stuff. But of course, as soon as the parent says, actually, when the child gets to 10, says, Mum, Fred at school said it wasn't real and it was Dad, buying all the presents, and Mum agrees with you, instantly it stops. The moment the parent or the significant other stops colluding with you, it stops immediately. But you also see the other end of the spectrum is if you look at any cults, for example, and there's been lots of documentaries over recent years about several well-known cults. They try to stop you from talking to people outside the cult. They try to stop you from watching TV programs outside the cult. They try to not let you have friends outside the cult. And the reason for that is because those friends and those people in those programs might challenge your beliefs and you might leave. Yeah?
Yes.
So stopping someone from being able to think for themselves independently or challenge their beliefs is a way of inadvertently or intentionally helping someone maintain a set of unhelpful beliefs about something. But another one might be a more extreme example might be if you have a child that feels very responsible for other people's feelings and perhaps has lots of social anxiety. If you then have a parent or guardian that, in an attempt to moderate the child's behaviour or in an attempt to help this child to grow into an all-rounded, well-rounded human being, might say, Joe, you make me really angry when you don't do your homework. Now, the intention is to get you to do your homework, okay, which is a good intention. But on the back of it, I'm making you responsible for my emotions. Okay? And you don't want to make dad angry, so you're going to do your homework, which you could argue, you weigh it up, all right, there's a good outcome in the end, okay? But actually, long term,
Yeah.
you are taking responsibility for my emotions. Now, I remember, and that happens a lot in a collusive relationship, particularly with a significant other. I remember having conversations, and there may even be on one of the previous videos, where an emetophobe and her mum, the relationship was kind of so inadvertently collusive that one was so anxious about managing the emotional responses of the other one that they never actually did anything. You know, the emetophobe wanted to go on a ski holiday, but really didn't want mum to worry about while she was away, so she didn't go.
Yeah.
And then mum was really worried because she wanted her daughter to go on a ski holiday, you know, so, and eventually they end up doing nothing. So they've both grown into, because mum's so kind and so caring and so loving, and the child really needed it, they've grown into this really, really tight, collusive, supportive relationship. And neither of them had actually created a skill set of their own, a coping skill set of their own. Their only coping mechanism was to use each other for support. And of course, then that gets really, really complex then. Really complex, really, really complex. I want your help.
Yeah.
I need your help today, Joe, but I don't want to upset you at the same time. Crikey. That's difficult. And it blurs particularly with a parent and child, and the child has emetophobia, it blurs those relationship boundaries so much that it becomes very, very difficult. And we've got lots of testimonials that you know about where one of the hardest issues to overcome for that person to get over their emetophobia was that collusive relationship, because they relied so much on that significant other and believed that significant other so much and cared so much what that significant other thought that it was very, very difficult to overcome their emetophobia while they had that. And someone asked recently about the significance of this, and I've not seen any data for it, but I don't remember ever treating, helping, supporting a young emetophobe that didn't have a collusive significant other.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah?
Because, so right, just on top of that then.
Sorry.
Sorry, mate, go on.
Because it's a bit like the Santa thing again, okay? You know, you don't need a parent age 10 to tell you, you know, we fibbed about Santa, it's not real. You don't need the school bully to come up to you and bully, Joe, fancy believing that nonsense? Of course he's not real, okay? You couldn't maintain your belief in Santa past age 10 or 12, okay? Because as you start to, you know, as you're at school and you start to learn about life and physics and everything else, you soon twig that one person can't be in every child's home around the world in a space of 10 hours, right? Regardless what the Christmas films tell you, okay? So you'd come to your own conclusion and you yourself would overcome your belief in Santa without anyone telling you any different, okay? Without anyone needing to challenge you on it, you'd overcome it. To an extent, the same thing goes for emetophobia. Because the overwhelming evidence, if you just looked around, is that very, very few people feel the same way that you do about it. You know, you got an older brother, you got a dad. You heard the story last week of that guy that just was sick at the chip shop and then carried in it. You know, there's loads of evidence out there that would challenge your belief if you just looked at it. And if you just looked at that evidence, which essentially is what our program's about, right? It's the evidence against it, yeah? If you just looked at the evidence and stopped seeking and searching for evidence that agrees with your belief, stop going on forums, stop going on chat groups, stop talking to other friends that have got emetophobia, other friends that have got OCD or anorexia or another comorbid thing, right? And you stopped speaking to all those people and you just focused on changing your belief and managing your thinking, you'd overcome your emetophobia. So that's how significant it is. I don't believe, I can't remember ever treating a sub 25-year-old emetophobia that didn't have a significant other that was maintaining their belief inadvertently. And I also think the opposite side of that coin is also true, that whilst you have a significant other that is very collusive, it's very difficult to overcome it. Okay, if you're going through Thrive with me now to overcome your emetophobia, and you're trying really, really hard, and you're 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and you're coming home every day from school or college, wherever, and you've got a parent or a partner or someone else that is helping you to maintain that belief, someone that you really, really trust, someone that you're in this close emotional relationship with, you're going to put far more kudos in what they are saying than in what you believe or what me as your coach believes and helping you to overcome it. It's very difficult to overcome emetophobia as a sub 25-year-old if you have a significant other that's not helping you to overcome it. And that's the reason why now we don't work with directly as coaches with young children anymore, or even really young teenagers anymore, without working with one or both of the parents at the same time, because it's very difficult for them to challenge that. Sorry, I butt in, Joe. Next question.
No, that's okay, mate. No, it's sort of my last question is covering all the bases that I'm looking for. Thank you. Is, let's say, for example, sort of as an emetophobe, excuse me, trying to overcome it, kind of worst case scenario in terms of a collusive relationship would be if my mum that I lived with at home also had emetophobia, right? They're obviously, given everything you've just talked about, are going to be wanting to collude with my beliefs. If I can't leave that collusive relationship, I can't just leave home, I'm too young, and, how or what is the best course of action then to go about trying to overcome my phobia, even though there is a significant other there constantly colluding with my belief because my mum has emetophobia?
Great question. Okay. Again, I have to take a slight step back. So, excuse me. In other podcasts and in the manuals, etc., we talk about the fact that a phobia, particularly emetophobia, is just a belief. It's a series of beliefs and thinking styles that are unhelpful, that are maintaining this belief system. And so you're not born an emetophobe, you're not born with any phobias. So in order to have a emetophobia in the first place, and those beliefs and those thinking styles, etc., let's just take one of those unhelpful thinking styles, catastrophizing, okay? We tend to copy most of our beliefs and thinking styles off our parents, okay? Off the people we grew up with, off the people we grew up around, okay? As a young child, as a very young child, you would have spent the majority of your time either with your mum or dad, okay? Or both of them, okay? And then when you get a little bit older, with your mum and dad and your friends in your neighbourhood, at your school, that probably tend to pretty much think and act the same way as you do because they're local to you, okay? So you take on board their thoughts, their beliefs, their attitudes, their behaviours in exactly the same way, Joe, that you take on board their accent, right? I sound like this because most of my life I've lived in Cambridge. You sound like that, and because I lived in Cambridge, I've copied the people in Cambridge. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't move to Cambridge and think, I'm going to copy how everyone speaks. Okay? I've just picked it up. I've inadvertently copied them. You've copied your parents, which is why you sound like you sound, and why Billy Connolly sounds very, very Glaswegian, or less so now, has been living in America for 30 years, okay? Just like we copy people's accents, we copy their beliefs and their thinking styles. Right. So if you're 20 and you've got emetophobia, that didn't fall out a tree and land in your lap. You've copied a lot of the thinking styles and beliefs that one or more of your parents and family members have had, and you've gone on to create emetophobia from that. So if you've got a teenager with emetophobia, it's very, very likely that at least one of the parents is a brooder and is quite obsessive. They don't have to have emetophobia
Yep.
for you to create it, but obviously it helps if they do, right? It's likely that you've got one parent who's a black and white thinker. All the research suggests that most people with social anxiety copied that social anxiety off their parent, right? If you've got a parent that's always saying to you, don't pick your nose in public, Joe, people will talk. Don't talk like that in public, Joe, people will talk. Don't say that in front of other people, Joe, blah, blah, blah. You're learning to have social phobia, social anxiety. Okay, so then
Yeah. Yep.
if we get to the point then where our phobia is an amalgamation of all of our thoughts and beliefs, which we've then made bigger by brooding and ruminating about it and worrying about it and thinking about it every day, it's obviously much easier for a child to have emetophobia if a parent has. Okay? Though not every child with emetophobia has a parent with emetophobia, every child with emetophobia certainly has a parent with some or all of the thinking styles and beliefs that you would need to create emetophobia. Okay? And that's why... That's another reason why most children and teenagers with emetophobia have a collusive parent way more than you would do in any other situation, because that parent has very likely got some or most of the thinking styles and beliefs that you have. Okay, so your mum or your dad, Joe, would have also had. They may not have had emetophobia, right? But they'd have had a big chunk of the beliefs and thoughts that you use to create yours, right? So they might also be quite obsessive about germs and hygiene, right? They may also, one of them was probably a bit of a catastrophizer. So let's say your mum was a big catastrophizer and would massively emotionally overreact sometimes at small things. When you say to mum, do you think I'm overreacting about this? She's probably going to say, no, I feel the same way, Joe. Yeah? Ring a bell?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
So, and if a parent or so a parent is way more likely to be a collusive significant other or be a big unhelpful collusive significant other than a friend or partner would be, okay? And the reason for that is that most of your thoughts and beliefs that have created your emetophobia, you copied from one of your parents anyway, okay? So your best mate now at work, because he's your mate and he loves you and he cares for you and he wants you to be happy and calm and enjoy your life, might still collude with you because he wants to go, all right, Joe, calm down. Yeah, it's scary, mate. I know, I get it. Okay, calm down. It's all right. Might collude with you, but probably nowhere near the extent that a parent or sibling would have done, because they probably share a lot of your beliefs that you already had that directed it in the first place. And let me give you one more example. So imagine you're a young child. Imagine you're 8 years old and you can't sleep because the bogeyman was coming to get you, right? And you go into mum and dad's room, or mum and mum's room, or whoever's room, right? Your parent guardian's room, and you say, "Mum, can I sleep in here tonight? I'm scared the bogeyman's going to get me." And mum says, "Yes, of course, darling. You be safe in here. Go back to sleep. There you go." In a way, she's been a brilliant and amazing mum, and has supported you, and has calmed you down, and looked after you, and made you feel all safe. Okay? But by saying you'll be safe in here, Joe, don't worry, you'll be okay, she's actually agreeing with you that the bogeyman exists.
Yeah.
Okay? So right now she's making you feel better. Okay? But tomorrow morning when you wake up and you go to school, you still believe in the bogeyman and that the only safe place is in mummy's bedroom. So the ideal thing, a better thing for mum to say would be, Joe, there's no such thing as the bogeyman. It's not real. No one's out there coming to get you. Stop worrying. But of course you can sleep here tonight. off you go, there's your bed. Okay, so she's challenging your belief whilst at the same time being caring, supportive, and making you feel safe. You have to challenge the belief as well, and it's a grey area, and it can be a fine line. And if you're older, if you're 30 and you've got emetophobia, as we know, you're likely to be female, and it's very difficult being that partner of the 30-year-old emetophobe, because you love your partner, but you also want an easy life, right? And if I'm too challenging, and I say, for God's sake, Joe, we're running late. We were supposed to be at your dentist by 10 o'clock, right? And you're still in the bathroom washing your hands. For Christ's sake, come on, get on with it. That's going to cause friction with us. So you got to weigh up all the time. The parent, the partner, the guardian, the teacher, the doctor, the psychiatrist, whatever, should always be thinking, how do I answer this question? How do I support this person in a way that least helps them to maintain their belief? How can I answer that?
Yep.
When your child comes home and they're crying, when your partner comes in and they're really stressed, when your mate comes in and he's really, really worried because he saw someone today being sick and he might have walked through it and whatever, blah, 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 blah. Before you open your mouth, think, okay, if I'm not careful here, I run the risk of helping Joe to maintain his phobia. Maybe even make his phobia worse. If I say, oh my God, I heard a story last week, Joe, that this happened. Your beliefs, your unhelpful beliefs are going to get even bigger. The question should always be, how can I support my partner, my child, my client, my whatever, in a way that helps them feel safe and supported, whilst at the same time helps them to gently challenge the beliefs and thoughts that are maintaining and propagating the phobia.
Yes. Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Almost.
Okay. Yeah.
Almost answers it.
Go on.
The only missing link I would suggest there is, if even after having a conversation, even potentially showing the significant other this podcast, right, and really trying to outline it in a way that is just demonstrating your boundaries and exactly how the relationship needs to work, they still continue to collude with you, right? The mum still has emetophobia. She's still inadvertently colluding with your beliefs. How are you meant to go about it then?
Okay. So that invariably depends on your age. Okay. So if we're talking about you for a minute, okay, you, how old are you now?
24.
24. So let's say you were 20 and you're going through the program to overcome your emetophobia, and you realised when you read the significant other section that your mum was inadvertently colluding with you. Age 20, you can have that conversation, can't you? You can gently have that conversation, say, Mum, you're the best mum in the world. I love you to bits. What would really help me to overcome this phobia, and I know you want me to overcome the phobia, but what would really help me is when I come home and I'm ranting and raving about this, that, and the other, what I'd like you to do and say is this instead of this. Don't say, oh yeah, it is terrible, Joe. It's awful, isn't it? Say, oh, you poor thing, come here. But remember, it's not actually about being sick, and you can get over this. And you can, if you learn to calm yourself down and tolerate it more, the phobia will disappear. But come here anyway, let's have a cuddle and we'll blah, blah, blah. If you're older than 20 and it's your partner, you can educate them as to the difference between being supportive and being collusive. You could get them to buy a version of the manual and read it themselves. You could sit down and give examples, and write some specific examples. You might be someone that checks the milk 5 times and checks the door locks 20 times before you go to bed, and washes your hands 15 times, and washes your hair 4 times a day. They may be your 5 big things that you do. I don't wash my hair 5 times a day, right? Think how much time I'm saving. So you might write down, so I said to you, right, Joe, this is what I want you to do in future, when I say, I'm just going to go and wash my hair again before we go out, this is what I'd like you to say. And that might be, Rob, it's not about that. It's not about your hair. We've talked about this. It's not going to help at all. Okay? It's not about being sick. And even if you were sick, you would cope. It's just a belief you've got about it. Calm yourself down. Come on. We've talked about this. Let's go out. Instead of saying, oh my God, it's scary. Yeah, you're right. Go and wash your hair. So you might just have an agreement about the 5 or 6 main areas where you can recognize they're being collusive. If you've got a really great partner who's very, very open to be as supportive as possible, they'll want to help. And actually, secretly, they want to challenge you, right? Because they're sick of agreeing, no pun intended, they're sick of agreeing with you all the time, right? They actually want to have your permission to say, hang on, Joe, I can't agree with you about that, mate. I cannot sit here and just agree with you that being sick is the worst thing in the world. Okay? The worst thing in the world at the moment is a war in Ukraine. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. You can't use the phrase worst thing in the world. Okay? So if it's not the worst thing in the world, what is it? It's a painful, horrible experience. Right, gotcha. That's a more accurate description. Let's just tone it down a little bit, because every time you use that dramatic language, again, you're helping to maintain your belief. You know, that tsunami of a few years back, the children dying in Africa of starvation at the moment, okay? You're not telling me that being sick is the worst thing in the world, okay? So that helps you get perspective on it and calm your language down a little bit. And as my partner, you've now given me permission to be challenging, and that makes it much, much easier. Much, much easier.
Yeah.
You know, and I saw someone recently for a session, and I think you've seen the video of it, giving, for a 35-year-old emetophobe, giving the partner permission to be challenging has had a massive effect on the client's emetophobia in the space of like 2 or 3 weeks. Because again, like you spent a lot of time with your parent when you were growing up, now that you're 30 and married, you spend a lot of time with your partner. So if your partner's going to gently, lovingly, caringly challenge you 5 or 10 times a day, it's not going to be very long, is it, until you start to think differently. If you're a young child, there's not a lot you can do about it. If you're a young child and you've got a collusive parent and you're 13 as a young teenager and you're going through the manual, all you can do is ask your parent or get your parent to have the adult version of the book. And that's the reason why, as a coach, we don't see people younger than 16 by themselves anymore, because we need to see a parent as well to train the parent to be supportive in the most helpful way. Not because the parent is the problem or the parent is the cause of the problem. I'm not saying that. You know, as a coach, I could spend an hour a week at most with a client. The parent spends 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 hours a week with that person. And if they're gently challenging their child all the time and helping them see things and think differently about things, they can be much more helpful in a shorter space of time.
Perfect. Cool. Unless you have got anything else to add, that pretty much is a fantastic dive into collusion and significant others, and I feel like it's definitely going to add a lot of value to anyone to be able to take a step back and think, what areas of my life and my relationships are inadvertently helping me to maintain my phobia, and allow people to have a bit of a conversation about it. So thank you very much, Rob.
Very welcome. I'm trying to go that way. I'm trying to go from Cambridge to London. This is a common metaphor for people going through the program, right? I'm trying to go from Cambridge to London to get over my emetophobia. And unless people help me to stay on that track, it's much harder to stay on it. That's the essence of colluding. That's the essence of it.